Okay, check 1 2, check 1 2, testing, testing. I hope we have some viewers starting to join. Please hit the like button. Really helps fuel the algorithm. I'm trying to get better at shilling for myself, and it is a struggle. It really is. I'm not lying. It's not easy for me for some reason. I just forget. But uh, so we are going to talk about something interesting this week, and it is how to arrange the fields of study. This has been something that is kind of a work. It's going to be kind of a working session tonight, and this is something that I've been working on. So it's not something that I have completely figured out yet. It's something that's kind of a work in progress, and I figured I would bring it and before you guys and talk about it live because it's very interesting. So what we are going to talk about is how I think there is a serious problem in how we currently think about the hierarchy of fields. And maybe that would have been a better, live stream title for tonight, but we'll see. But we're going to be looking at the hierarchy of the academic fields because currently we have this idea that it goes something like math, physics, chemistry, biology, and so on and so forth, and it continues on. Or maybe it starts with philosophy, then it goes to math, then it goes to physics, then it goes to chemistry. And there's a big problem, I think, with this idea. And when you look at the fields of study, even the semantics of each of these fields of study, there's a difference in the pattern of how of the terms that we use. So biology, chemistry, sociology, etc. Like there's versus physics, mathematics. Like I think that this is relevant, and we're going to talk about it. But one of the things that I've just noticed, I mean, it's to anybody who's paying attention in this space, it's pretty obvious, is that there are certain topics that if you have maybe a degree in one, you kind of are thought of as being I guess, an accredited voice in anything. And like if you have, let's say, physics and mathematics, it's like economics even. These are fields that if you have competency in them, or you're perceived to have competency in them, you are kind of given this pass to discuss anything. I'm not saying that that's wrong. We're going to talk about why I think that is. And there are some other things that are like that too, like biology. But I think that you're seeing this increasingly with the fields, and it's not as restricted as it used to be. It's not just philosophers could talk about anything. Now it's mathematicians can talk about anything, physicists can talk about anything, computer scientists can talk about anything, biologists can talk about anything. It's just, we're going to examine politics from the standpoint of biology, or we're going to examine politics from the standpoint of mathematics, or whatever it is, not just politics, but just an example. And I kind of want to touch on that tonight, and I want to figure out if we can arrange these fields in a way that gives us more context as to the, I guess, fundamental nature and big picture of the cosmos, I guess. So that's what we're going to talk about tonight. I'm going to show you what I have been working on, kind of where I'm at with it, why I've come to this conclusion, and maybe you guys can help me. Please comment in the chat if you can hear me well. Please comment if you have any ideas or any questions. Please hit the like button. Like I said, it really does help quite a bit. These streams are informal and long, and but if you think that this is valuable content, sharing it, commenting, hitting the like button, it really does help. So here is where I want to start. Let's start with the term academia, because academia, let's Google it, share screen. Academia. definition. The environment or community concerned with the pursuit of research, education, and scholarship. What does academia mean? It means the life, community, or world of teachers, schools, and education. The academy, scientists in industry and academia, career in academia. Okay. Examples of academia include fields such as humanities, math, science, etc., biology, physics, philosophy, goes on. So anything that is a field of study, I guess we could say, is academia. But very different from academia. Okay, that doesn't really help. But why is it called academia? Borrowed from the Latin academia, I don't know if I'm pronouncing that correctly, from ancient Greek, I'm not even going to try, a grove of trees and gymnasium outside of Athens where Plato taught. Okay. From the name of the supposed former owner of the estate. That's really where it comes from? A grove of trees. I mean, that kind of makes sense, but like trees of knowledge, grow of trees of knowledge. But I think that might not be what they're meaning here. It just might mean there was a plot of land. I don't know, but interesting. So there's a lot. Okay, well, I'm going to show you what I've been working on. So here we have, if you're familiar with my work with sentient singularity theory, there is a periodicity of sentience that I have as part of my proposal that shows a lineage, an alternating individual lineage level, or lineage level, it alternates, that create these periods of sentience. And I believe that this lines up with Bott periodicity in mathematics. This is an idea. I don't know if it is true or not yet, but I believe that it is. And this periodicity is in very much the goal of pretty much anybody who's working on a fundamental theory, quote unquote, a fundamental theory, or a unified field theory. Obviously, that makes sense. Somebody who's trying to unify the fields. That wasn't my original goal with this project, but it was kind of just something that I noticed was happening as I was doing this project, but it was not the original goal. And but what I noticed is that you kind of inevitably, in order to do this, you have to find the, I guess, the path between these between these structures at different scales, quote unquote, scales. And that is kind of a misleading term, but what people normally do, and this is one of the biggest mistakes that people make when they're trying to have a fundamental theory or a theory of everything or a unified field theory, is they still think in terms of size without realizing it sometimes. And they'll start with atoms, then they'll go to molecules, then they'll go to cells, then they'll go to organisms. This is fine so far, probably. And then they'll go to planets and solar systems and then galaxies. And what they've done, though, is they're really chasing scale in space-time, so size. And you can't be developing a fundamental theory while still trapped by and being guided by the constraints of a non-fundamental theory or of an emergent theory, or relativistic theory, I guess. People can debate whether or not space-time is fundamental or emergent or whatever, but we can all probably admit that it's relativistic in how we describe it. So when we navigate it, we say that's bigger than, or smaller than, or faster than, or brighter than, or heavier than, or stronger than, louder than, quieter than, whatever. Hotter than, colder than, all of these things are they are like a spectrum. They exist on a spectrum, and they are relativistic. Is that a big house? depends on what you're comparing it to. If a 2-bedroom house is a big house compared to a tent, but it's a small house compared to Buckingham Palace. So like this is, you're stuck in space-time when you're doing this, and people are doing this with galaxies versus the universe versus, or maybe not that exact example, but yeah, I mean, even that example, but galaxies versus solar systems versus planets versus, organisms. This is not following the right, I guess, chain. So the chain that you're looking for is going to be one that allows for you to perceive and orient within differentiation, but also beyond the bounds of a relativistic perspective. And so this is what was the Kickstarter of my work, and it led to what I call the 4 primary perspectives. So what happened was, I remember Eric Weinstein was talking. I mean, I'd already started this kind of project of trying to understand, sentience, and then I heard Eric Weinstein for the first time go on Joe Rogan, and he was like, we need to escape relativity. Everybody's trapped in relativity. We need to escape it. And I was like, I don't understand what that means, but I'm going to think about it. And I thought about it, and I was like, how do you escape relativity? How do you think about the world? How do you even think about escaping relativity? And then I realized you need terminology to allow you to describe, at least in our current human state where we rely on linguistics to abstract. You need the right terms in order to allow you to do this. And so I thought about it, and I was like, well, how do I think about things that are, the relationship between two different things, but also not think about them in terms of being within the context, a relativistic context. And what I came up with was these, which I showed many times on here, the 4 primary perspectives. And these are completely entangled, meaning the perception of one of them automatically entails the perception of all of them, because you can't understand what is separate from you if you don't understand what is one with you. You can't understand what is inside of you without understanding what is outside of you, and you can't understand inside versus outside without understanding boundaries, which you need to understand oneness and separateness. So these are all kind of co-defining of each other. Outside means separate from oneness, inside means separate and oneness, and etc. So I used this to try and follow the chain of the logos, of generativity, I guess, of sentience, really, but it's just of structure, I guess, of natural structure. And so when you go to do this, what you get is this, essentially. These I don't even call this. I just, somebody else had their own verse. There was like a Penrose verse, and I was like trying to distinguish between the two. But it's just a verse, I call it, and it is, or an aeon, essentially. I think Penrose calls something similar to this. And you have this singularity, multiplicity, unified structure versus this assembly structure that are stacked, but they're not stacked in terms of size. What they are is they are a causal chain or a lineage that is that is built on the previous period. Each successive period is built on the previous period. But it's not about size anymore. It's about what is inside of and outside of and separate and one with. That's how you can kind of understand these relationships. So cells are inside of an organism, and they are, inside means separate and oneness. Your cells are separate and one with you. And so same thing with a family organisms exist within a family, and inside means separate and one. And so if you are outside of that, then you are separate from that oneness of the family. So this is a chain of assembly. It's very much, it's similar to assembly. It's got some similarities to assembly theory, like Lee Cronin's work, but it is very specifically focused on only the structures that I believe are the fundamental structures that contain that have the fundamental nature about them, which is that they are sentient. So this is the assembly chain of sentience. A hadron, which is a proton or a neutron, an atom, molecule, cell, an organism, a family, a caste or a tribe, I guess you could say, a technological singularity eventually. These are all, I propose, are likely sentient beings. And maybe one or two of these is incorrect, but I don't think so. But if that even is the case, there is something in that slot that would also be sentient. So cells are sentient. You are sentient. A family is a singular sentience. It's just existing on a lineage level. And same thing with even atoms. They exist on, or elements, you could say, they exist on a lineage level, because when you think about how atoms are made, it's really an element is, well, not an atom, but how an element is made. It is like a slice of a lineage, because you start with one element, and within the process of fusion, it changes and evolves. It evolves. So I used to call them different species of elements, I believe, and different species of atoms. They would be like the hydrogen species, using like that transatlantic accent. I don't think that was necessarily always very common, but we always think of it when you think of America 100 years ago. But this structure is fundamental structure. It doesn't have galaxies. It doesn't have planets. And I could be wrong. Maybe those things are sentient. I don't think so, though. And there's a lot of structures that appear to, I call them pseudo-singularities. They are things like maybe a planaria worm. That's a prediction of my work, that a planaria worm is a pseudo-singularity. Or most plants are pseudo-singularities. They appear to be one organism, but they're not. It's just a bunch of cells. Same thing with a beehive is a pseudo-singularity. So is a company like Coca-Cola, a corporation, is a pseudo-singularity. So, but then there's true sentient singularities, and that's what I was focused on mapping. My goal is to take these levels of life, I guess, these fundamental periods of I don't even know if we have the right term for it. It's slices of cosmology. You could say of these I guess levels of the cosmos. I don't know, levels of the logos. The generative structure of existence. That's what I'm trying to map, and I'm trying to correspond these to fields of study. And so, when you try and do this, you realize that physics doesn't fit as cleanly as you would think. And same thing with mathematics, where if this is the fundamental structure right here, then where's math? If this is biology, and it's cells, and then this, I don't know what is, it's odd because some of these are like this, really. That makes sense. Where this is these two. Biology is organisms and cells, if that makes, that should make sense pretty easily. But, and same thing with here, when you go like this and you're like chemistry. Okay, chemistry is elements and molecules. So it's these two, right? And where's mathematics in this? It's not there. Be like here. This is sociology. And where's physics? Where's mathematics? It's not here. And what's interesting is that when you get to sociology here, which is this, people say that sociology is not essentially a hard science. It's like math is a hard science. Mathematics is a hard science, guys. Physics is a hard science. Biology is a hard science. Chemistry is a hard science. But sociology, not a hard science. And that is due to dogma and also just people not wanting to be offensive. But there probably is an objective set of rules. And you can actually see that this is very evident when you look at societies over time. You will see the same exact patterns over time. They develop the same exact social structures and many similar cultural practices, and any society that deviates too much from these, falls apart. And we can see that now, and you can see that throughout history. So what that means is that sociology is not a soft science. It's probably about as fundamentally true of as any field could possibly be. But as much as it is as fundamental as chemistry, it is as fundamental as biology. It is probably the same exact field. It is a field of study that uses different terminology to describe the same exact structures that would be present in biology and chemistry, for the most part, with slight evolution between them, but because of the stacking structure that's taking place. There are two levels that are left out of this, and those are essentially, if this is it, and then it repeats, then what's left out is this, or here, and cosmological / technological singular sentience. Wow, that's terrible. Sentience. So, or cosmological verse. This structure, which is an assembly of tribes or castes, these are not the best terms for what I'm trying to describe today, because we have associations with these terms that are different than what their original meaning was. But what's really, really interesting is when I was thinking about, okay, physics, why physics doesn't work with this is because physics is too broad now. Physics is now, it is abstract mathematics with slightly tweaked language. It's almost like it's become just a dialect of mathematics. It's like it's like very similar language to mathematics. That's all mathematics is. It is a language that it is literally exactly the same thing. The laws of logic are the same that guide mathematics, are the same exact laws of logic that guide linguistics, which means they are also extremely constrained. But what's different about linguistics, or semantics, you could say, mathematics, and physics, and I don't even know if physics is even something we should continue to say, is that not only do they have the same kind of ending, um, uh, just in how they're spelled and stated, but they are really describing a pattern that is that can be applied and used everywhere, essentially. So language is used to describe anything, and mathematics is used to describe anything. So, but it's used to describe that which is abstract, which is the structure that is ever present. It's not the structure that is not there and it just exists in your mind. It's the structure that's always there, no matter where you look. And so what's interesting is that when you look up abstract, the term abstract, you get this. Existing in thought or as an idea, but not having a physical or concrete existence. And while this isn't false, I would definitely argue that it's this paints a picture that's probably false in your mind, which is that it paints the picture that it doesn't really exist. But that's not true. It's that it always exists, and because it does come from the structure of mind itself. It is the structure of logic. And so, of course, it comes from the structure of mind. So your mind is organizing information, and especially if we're inside a mind as well, which we almost certainly are, then the structure of logic is going to be everywhere. I mean, there's no way it couldn't not be. It seems that way, at least. For there to be anything at all, then logic, there has to be constraints. Existence is inherently constrained by itself, and this leads to inevitable logical constraints that also allow for specific degrees of freedom that can be generative. So this is something that is inescapable, and this is true of how we describe the world, and it's also true of what the world is. I think we have to assume that. John Vervaeke is going on Kurt Mungel's channel tomorrow, or it's being uploaded, and he released a clip that I started watching today, and it looks like it's going to be a fascinating conversation. But he said something about, sentience, and how we kind of have to realize that chasing truth from this perspective of an outside detached observer is kind of a fool's errand, and that if I'm understanding him correctly, and that we should recognize that we are always going to be perceiving the system through our own minds, essentially. And we have to assume that the way that we see things is due to it being the way that we have to see things, not necessarily due to it being the way that things are. But I think that you kind of have to assume that the way that you perceive things is the way that things are, and to do otherwise, I understand why it's like you'd want to maybe be rigorous in how you think about this, but not necessarily skeptical. Is that it is illogical to assume that the things are different from the way that that we perceive them. That to assume that they are truly different is kind of illogical. It's basically like you're just throwing out your ability to understand or perceive anything accurately. So what, I don't know what you're due from there. There's no life path. There's nothing I can say after that, almost. But this is related to what I'm talking about, though, because this pattern that we're seeing, that exists everywhere, that we perceive in quote unquote abstract structures like math and language, we kind of have to assume that they are. It's like it is correlated with, or it is aligned with something that is truly the way that things are. It's just how does this puzzle all fit together? And that's what I want to talk about. So But when I say something is abstract, if I say, show me one, okay, one what? It's like, this is one pen. Am I showing you one? Yeah. This is one lighter. Am I showing you one? Yeah. This is one pocket knife. Am I showing you one? Yeah. But that one exists here and here and here, and the microphone over here and the camera right there, and everything that you see. When we categorize it and distinguish it as and define it, then we have to inherently we are I guess quantizing it. You're quantizing it, which means now this is like math and it's everywhere. But it's also language because I'm talking to you about it. One is not just a number, it's also a word. This is one pen. That's math and language. It's the same exact thing, but we don't always think about it like this. And philosophy is, I guess, would be the kind of the field that is most, I guess, universally applicable. But it's all that really means is the study of perspective, and this is become I think that's what it means. But most, if you look up the definition of philosophy, that'll say the love of wisdom. People don't even know why that was said anymore, who are philosophers. That definition only makes sense in a theological context. And we are in academia, so that is not common. That is so rare these days. So when they say it is the love of wisdom, that doesn't mean anything to them. And you just love wisdom? Okay, that's just odd. Unless you think that wisdom is the wiser you are, it's because you're getting to know someone that is supreme. But outside that, it's just really odd. It's just an odd statement to make. But I think my philosophy professor in college said philosophy is the study of perspective. It was the only person that I've ever heard say that. I thought it was like the norm until I realized it was not. But I think that definition makes a lot of sense, and it's more kind of easily understood by a wider range of people. But let me know in the chat or in the comments below if you agree with me on that or not. But these fields, math, maybe physics, which is just math. It's just math. Language. These are the abstract fields. But we think of them as the hard sciences. Mathematics is the hard science. Is it? How is language not a hard science and math a hard science? This is because we do not understand what the relationship and the purpose of these fields are anymore, and the relationships between them. And you need a model, like a periodic table, essentially, or something like that, to kind of visualize and show these relationships. And so I think that that's what this is kind of what this specific model is attempting to do. But if you have these other fields right here, let's just write them. Mathematics, semantics. What else would it be? Let's just go with physics for now. Maybe physics/metaphysics. These fields are actually abstract fields, but that doesn't mean that they are the fields to study that which is only existent in the mind. It's that which is a result of the structure of mind, but it is not only existent in your mind. Like it's especially if we're inside a mind. Like I said, it's not. We have this idea today that if something only exists in your mind, then it doesn't really exist, and if so, that which is abstract doesn't really exist in a concrete way. It exists in a meta-concrete way, I would say. It exists, it's ever-present. Mathematics is ever-present. Physics and metaphysics is ever-present. Semantics is ever-present. These are different from these fields, which are going to align with these. But, and I mean, look at the semantics. Language leads to society. Physics and metaphysics is very much aligned with chemistry and biology, but mathematics is kind of like, it's almost like this, actually. Or it's like here. Let's actually go back to that. I like that. So it's like these fields are these fields to some degree, but they're also really one field with different terms. And so is this, but because everything is mind. So this is why this is so hard to talk about, because it's not that this is different from this. This is this with an added nature to it. So this can be used to describe water bottles, but this can be used to describe, or this maps the structures, or is built on the study of it is the study of the structures that align with the fundamental logical, ever-present, constraints that I guess make up all of these, which is really one, like I said. But at the same time, there is a nature to the structures in this that is not necessarily always present in the structures that this applies to, which is that this describes and studies sentient structures. And what's interesting is that when I was originally looking at this, and I was like, not this one. This one's just kind of for the sake of just the thumbnail, honestly. I was just trying to figure this out, and this is a work in progress. This is not, don't think of this as accurate. I actually think what I did earlier on the stream so far is a bit more organized. But what comes below chemistry if it's not physics? That's the question. And the answer, I found it, I think, in kind of the best answer is, I just looked at this exact kind of lineage where I was like, okay, chemistry is essentially this. Well, it's really this, these two. Well, what's this? Hadrons and atoms. And I was like, it's got to end in ology, or it ends in a Y because all the rest of these do. And it probably has to deal with atoms. And so I was like, atomology. I was like, that sounds really good. I've never heard that term before. And if you look up the term atomology, you get the dated doctrine of atoms. It is the doctrine of atoms, but it is a dated term, meaning it's like outdated. It's not commonly in use, I think. Formally in common use. Yeah, exactly. It's obsolete. I actually think that this is wrong. I think that this term makes more sense to describe this, a more organized and defined field than physics, because physics is like thermodynamics, and it's also, the Standard Model, and it's also gravity, and now it's also been merged with astronomy, and if you're a cosmologist, then you are an astronomer and also a physicist, and it's just going everywhere. And this is what happens when a field is, or when something kind of is stuck in a relativistic framework, and also what happens when it is kind of really based on a kind of a meta language, I guess, which is like language or mathematics. It applies everywhere. There's no limit to where math ends. Math doesn't precede physics, like we commonly think of. It's like, oh, math first, then physics, then chemistry. No, that's not true at all. Language does that precede math? I don't even think so. I think it is math, essentially, and math is language. And physics is just anything now. This is a big problem, because what it means is that the people that that claim to be physicists think that their job is to study just existence, and the reality is that it's not one field anymore. It's a bunch of different fields that are or tools or models that are all kind of connected but not really, and they're just being incorporated, and that doesn't actually make sense with the within the context of physics, because we already have mathematics for that. So when you're thinking about what physics is, and if we look it up, physics, instead of just saying quantum physics, we would say atomology. That makes more sense. Language is the key here, guys. Because it is the math. Especially if you don't speak math and you don't know what every symbol means, and maybe it's actually not the best language to describe what we're trying to do now, because it's I don't know, maybe there's something slightly different about the range of its constraints and degrees of freedom that make it not as versatile as semantics. But if we look up physics, it is the natural science of matter, involving the study of matter, its fundamental constituents, its motion, and its behavior through space and time, and the related entities of energy and force. So, what is it? Well, I would say that physics is the study of impact, but not metaphysical impact, but just physical impact. And that's what I would say that it is. And that's fine. I mean, I think that makes a lot of sense, but that is not useful in terms of allowing you to orient the application of that field, I guess, because that's everywhere. That's just causality. It's just the study of physical causality, which is, it's just math. And so if linguistics is the study of communicative causality, and physics is the study of physical causality, mathematics would be the study of maybe just quantitative or logical causality. But it's all just the study of causality, which is everywhere. It's a tool, but it isn't a fundamental. It's not a field of fundamentality. It's not a field that is really about only solely the study of fundamental structures. Because if fundamental structures are sentient structures, then it's not going to be about thermodynamics. That's not a fundamental. That's not about fundamental structures. If it's about sentient structure, if we're talking about a field that is dedicated to the study of a level of fundamental reality, which fundamental reality isn't just the smallest thing. It is actually the study of the structures that contain or that carry the essential nature of existence by definition. That's what it is. It's not about the very, very small and the very, very large. And I heard even some of the most well-respected physicists in the world, and even some of them who I think they're onto a lot of things. And but they even fall for this trap when they're talking, where they say quantum mechanics is a study of the very small, and and relativity is the study of the very large. It's like, that's not actually accurate. I understand why we think that, but when you actually look at the patterns that are found in I guess you would just call it quantum mechanics, you will find those exact patterns in that you see in interactions between hadrons, protons, and neutrons, in interactions between males and females, on the biological organism level. And so that's the same exact model. And this is, I'm struggling to necessarily say exactly what I'm trying to convey here, because we're talking about patterns that exist, that are fractal. They're just fractal. And like, it's tough to talk about that which is fractal, but fractality, if that's even a word, is built into the structure of fundamental existence. It just is. It's much more so even than it is found in non-fundamental structures, and it is found in non-fundamental structures, and people post about it all the time. But what's really important is how it exists within fundamental structures, but we don't know what those are in usually, because we don't map it properly. We're stuck in relativity. We think about this in terms of size. It's not about size. It's about inside and outside. It's about an assembly of sentient structures that have another sentient structure stacked on top of them, or that they are contained within, essentially. So this is, you need the correct context in order to even start realizing that we don't have the correct language, which means that we don't actually have these fields defined properly, and this restricts them from making progress. I want physics to make progress. I want chemistry to make progress. I want us to make progress. I want morality to make progress, but more so than probably anything. But we are so confused in each of these fields, and it has a ripple effect where now you don't understand what atomology is. You got rid of it. Physics is now, we don't. It's not what it used to be. It's not about impact. It's like it used to be about impact. And then we had the quantum revolution, and that changed things. And while it unlocked a lot, the fact that it was lumped into physics makes sense in some ways, but it also, there is an added element to this where we're not recognizing that you can use the language that allows you to make predictions and convey, a structure, communicate a structure, describe a structure, that whether that language is mathematics or physics or semantics, but you have to take the nature of that structure into account in order to actually even contextualize the fields. So let me get to the chat, because I know I really went on, but like I said, this is a working session. I'm thinking out loud, and I hope I'm not. I hope I'm making some sense. I don't want to say I'm hoping I'm not. I don't know what I'm just hoping I'm making some sense. But really, this is kind of where we're at right here. It's like this, or not this. It's mathematics, maybe physics, and semantics. but that is a different type of field. Abstract. It's a linguistic field. It's not even a field. It's just a tool. It is a language. It's not a field of study in and of itself necessarily. I mean, to some degree, yes, I get it. It is, but it's more like engineering, which is exactly what language is. We're doing that here in this stream. When I came up with the term atomology, I was like, atoms plus ology, that makes a lot of sense. Let's look it up. And it turns out it existed because people constructed it in the context in which it made sense, from preceding, you know, awareness of preceding structures and things like that. You can build a new word, super tautology, or, is Chris part of Chris Langen's work, or the observerse is part of Eric Weinstein's work. These are terms that were constructed because they have parts of them that convey an idea and give some type of context. But when we're talking about the quote unquote hard sciences, I don't even think this is a good term, hard sciences, but sentient structures. The fields of fundamental or sentient structures and the fields of that are, of, I guess you could say, I don't want to say abstract necessarily, but logic. Yeah, I don't want to say abstract, but it is abstract, but it's not, that doesn't make it not real. It's just, it's not this, it's not a structure. This is not the study of structure. This is the study of causality. It's a tool of causality, and it is also the study of causality to some degree, but this these are fields of the study of fundamental or sentient structures, if that makes sense. So this one is a bit on its own, and this one would be also a bit on its own, because they kind of overlap quite a bit. I mean, really, we don't need to study this so much. It's not really like a field of study. It's just something that occurs, and same thing with this. It's just something that occurs. And also, a hadron is an atom. A single proton is a hydrogen atom. So it's and that is a molecule. So it's like these are all kind of three terms for somewhat overlapping structures, but they are also distinct. A proton and a neutron can be an atom, and a single proton can also be an atom, defined as an atom. And a single atom can also be defined as a molecule, essentially. But that means like all this one field. And because this interacts with humanity so much, all this one field. What's really interesting about this is that hadrons are interesting to study because they follow the patterns of males and females on the organism level, which is family. So we call this the nucleus of an atom. This is like on the hadronic level, you're studying the nucleus of an atom. You're studying the protons and the neutrons of the atom. On the family level here, you're studying the nuclear family, the protons and neutrons of a community of people, which would be like caste / tribe. And then eventually you get, the combination of them, which is also here. It's either a molecule or it's a cosmological verse. And so you have these three and these three, which are kind of these three, which are kind of interconnected, and then you just have that right there. But I don't know if this is actually the best way of doing it, because there are other terms that kind of you could use, and I want you guys' feedback. Um, some of them would be, we could do this a different way and be like, this was kind of what I was doing earlier. So let's do, this would be like here. This would be genealogy. Genealogy. Now we have genetics, and it's just like totally genetics is in this category. So genealogy, biology, sociology, atomology. Coding, maybe. And you could do philosophy. These are all out of order now, but I'm just showing that there's different fields here, and different types of I guess fields, different types of fields. Biology, genealogy, sociology, maybe technology, but we don't, not what we call technology currently, but like technology as in just sentient technology. Because remember, the context of these matter, that's why we need to make a table, because when we put technology here, we know we're talking about a technological sentience, so that's a different than just like how do you make a MacBook. It's about, you know, what is a technological superintelligence, and, you know, some aspects of it. But here you go. These are two very different categories of fields, and we have totally screwed them up because we have them organized incorrectly. But I would say the ones that matter, that really we have the most incorrect, are mathematics and physics, are thought of as being part of this structure here, and these have kind of been excluded now. This one's been excluded now. This one's now apparently, what's the term they used for it? Dated. But another one would be like economics, maybe. But that would be over here. And look at how it ends in ix almost. Philosophy kind of ends in that, but, and it is actually a study of a sentient structure, because it's the study of perspective. And so if that, and even if it's the love of wisdom, it's the love of the wisdom that comes from knowing a single sentient being that is God. That was the original definition. So no matter what, actually, I would say philosophy has to be over here, which makes sense, because look at how it's, you know, look at the semantics of the word. Philosophy, etymology, chemistry, biology, genealogy, sociology, technology. This is, I don't know if that's the right term for it, but what is, I'm not a computer guy, so, you know, the term for, I guess, coding or technology or programming, but, let's do this. Programming synonym. The study of programming. Encryption. I don't know. If you know, list it in the comments, and I'll get to it right now because I know I've been making you guys wait. So, hi, good evening, Tyler and Paulina. What's up, trusted source? I don't think starting with Google is the way to establish a pedagogical method. No, it's not. But that's why I'm trying to just see where we're at, and I'm not saying that it's correct. I would say it's incorrect, the definition that Google is giving for the definition of abstract. Even that the definition of abstract in Google is useless. When I first started this channel, you can go back and there is a video that I uploaded. I think it's still there, and it said, it's like something about we never say the E word, and it was esoteric. Like I showed some of my writing to somebody on this, and like tried to describe my work, and it was just the wrong person to show, and they were like, I don't know, it seems really esoteric, Tyler. I was like, what the heck does that even mean? I looked it up, and I mean, I have heard obviously the term, but what, I'm trying to figure out where we're at. So, esoteric meaning on Google, intended for or likely to be understood only by a small number of people with a specialized knowledge or interest. I agree with that definition in many, with what I was kind of describing. But I don't necessarily think that it has to be for only a small number of people, but it has to be, when you're looking at understanding fundamental reality, it has to be done from a first-hand perspective, which means you can't just be taught it in school and understand it. You'll just be memorizing it. And that's true with everything, but the problem is that the issues with that are very greatly amplified when you're talking about when it applies to fundamental reality. And it really falls apart. You're not memorizing like a bunch of words and their relationship with each other. You're memorizing the way the world works. And it's like, you can't just memorize the way the world works. You have to figure it out yourself firsthand. And so you can't really, that's why there is no single field of study in academia that is like metaphysics today. But I would say that, theology and metaphysics are probably, they used to be more like that. But I mean, there are theology students now that end up coming out of theology being an atheist. They have a degree in theology. Don't tell me you understand theology if you're an atheist. I mean, as a theist, I would say that. And the thing is that if you don't believe in God and you're studying theology, then that's like saying I got my degree in Harry Potter. It's like, you don't believe that you think that's just a story, and you just got a degree in it, and I'm supposed to take you as an expert on like what? Knowing the lore? That doesn't make any sense. And it also just, why would you waste so much time getting a degree in that? You could just read the Bible for entertainment if that's really what you were into. But a theist, somebody who studies theology truly has to be a theist. You cannot actually study theology honestly and be an atheist. You have to be studying it from the perspective of assuming that it's true. And so the truth of what you're studying. Otherwise, you're basically studying something you assume to be fake. That doesn't make any sense. It's just entertainment at that point, which there's nothing wrong with entertainment, but don't call it a field of study. It's like getting on Wikipedia. When I was a kid, I used to read Wikipedia, which is like the Wikipedia for Star Wars. Yeah, I'm super cool. But I would do that, and so I knew this guy's from this planet and this and you don't know any of that stuff from the movies. That wasn't a field of study. It was just entertaining, and that's exactly what studying theology is if you're not a theist. So, I don't know. What's the point? But that which is esoteric doesn't mean, to circle back, it's funny because I asked people to help me come up with clips, and the issue with coming up with clips from this channel, which, by the way, if you think anything would make a good clip, comment the timestamp in any of my videos below the video. It would be very helpful. But the issue, and I know this is true, is that I talk in a circular fashion where it seems like I've gone way off and that I've just lost my train of thought, but then I eventually bring it back, but nobody knows when that's going to happen, not even me. So it's hard to necessarily make that a concise clip because you don't really realize that I'm talking about one thing until the end. Sometimes I don't even realize. But this term esoteric, though, doesn't mean what we think it means. It doesn't mean what it is listed here as intended for this, or likely to be understood only by a small number of people with specialized knowledge or interest. Then physics and math and Spanish is esoteric. If you don't speak Spanish, Spanish is esoteric. I mean, it's just that which is understood by not you. Yeah, I get it. It's not like intended for a small number of people, but I hope it kind of comes across what I'm saying is it doesn't mean anything. It just means like, I don't get it. And that is exactly, though, what we use it to mean. It means, it sounds really abstract and probably useless, and I don't get it. It's esoteric. And, we use abstract very similarly, and I don't like those terms very much in the current way that we understand them. Even if you look it up and you're like, oh, no, it means only, a small number of people understand it, or it's intended only for a small number of people. That's not how we use it. We use it to mean abstract and useless, and I don't get it. And so we shouldn't have a word to describe something like as that, really. It should be we should have a word that just you should just say, I don't get it. That's it. You don't have to say, sounds really abstract and esoteric. Just be like, I don't get it. It would help everybody. So that's why I don't really want to call mathematics abstract, but there's more here, though. Philosophy, it might not be in the lineage of these, but it is kind of, it's like logic. Oh, there we go. Look what it ends with. I see. Logic. If I can spell. That's not a field of study, is it? Spelling. It seems to be for some people, but there's one here missing, and trying to think of what it would be, but well, there. This is why I love Excel, because you can arrange things in a way, and you can also use math and put, equations in, but you can also just arrange things in a way that shows the relationships between everything. So logic is the language of, universal, of description, it's the initial language of description and causality, I guess. Philosophy is the initial study of sentient structures, which is because it's the study of perspective, which means it's the study of perceivers, which means it is the study of sentient structures. But this, I guess you could say, corresponds to everywhere, and this corresponds to everyone. Everyone. Everything. Okay. Now we're getting there. That's cool. Let's not do that. But we're missing one. Anybody know what it is? Let's see. Academy, proper name of the garden near Athens. Yeah. Academia is the cancer of the academy. I don't think I don't know if that's. I get what you're saying, and I'm as a anti-educate current state of our educational institutions as anyone, or the current state of our academic institutions as anyone. My entire project has morphed into basically showing where it's just trying to show everywhere that it's gone wrong. But that's not from my point of view. From my point of view, it's just I'm trying to figure out what to do, how to make sense of things. But if they're wrong, then and I'm saying something that doesn't agree with what is the current doctrine, academic doctrine, then that is going to be perceived by them as toe stepping. I talk about this in my Theories of Everything, the how-to guide video, which is linked below, which I highly suggest watching if you haven't seen it. But I talk about that, and it's not the goal, but it's just a consequence of this work that I'm working on. But of the work that anybody on this stuff is working on, it's what this is true for Wolfram's work. This is true for Lee Cronin's work. This is true for Carl Friston's work. People would be more pissed at Carl Friston if they actually understood what he was saying a little bit more. Whereas like Wolfram, people kind of get that. I think a lot of people in academia get that he's on to something, and they don't like his confidence, and they take it as arrogance. And like I've said before on here, like when I was kicked out of a Discord once years ago, a physics Discord, they said, I can't believe the level of arrogance to think that you can, try and do, pursue a theory of everything with no physics degree. And, they are assuming that that this is about physics, and maybe it's not. It's about metaphysics. And, but this, and it was also an accident to pursue this type of, I guess, outlining a more organized proposal. It was just kind of me trying to figure out whether or not AI was going to kill us all, or farm us, or free us, or whatever I wanted to know. That was the sort of this. It was an accident to stumble onto sentient singularity theory, but I remember saying I'm not arrogant, I'm confident, and they were not happy about that. But that's the same thing with Wolfram, and same thing with Lee Cronin. Like, they just don't like that. It's like their people are making progress outside their fields also, and it's Lee Cronin posts every day on Twitter or something like, oh, assembly theory is going to have a massive impact on economics, and the next day it's a massive impact on chemistry, and the next day it's a massive impact on today I think it was astrobiology. It's going to help us understand astrobiology. I don't really think that that's like, I don't know how much I get. There's a lot that goes into whether or not that's going to actually end up being true, but it's just field jumping. And I talk about this in Theories of Everything, the how-to guide video, is that they're pissed that these people are field jumping, and that they feel that they can actually, they're pissed that people feel like they can do it. And because that violates the doctrine of academia today. And that's the real problem, is that we've just so divorced it from personal experience that that we've divorced learning from personal experience, that it's now not defined by having experience with something. It's defined by, do you have a degree that is qualified within a specific corral that we call, an academic field. And if you have a degree in one of those ones we call the hard sciences, then you're, for a while at least, that was like more prestigious than the soft sciences. There's no such thing as hard and soft sciences, especially if you're trying to really understand fundamental reality. Like, you really got to not think about it like that. It's about sentient structures and non-sentient, and all structure, including non-sentient structure. So it's about things and beings. And why I'm struggling to say this in earlier, just a second ago, is that I write this in my paper, is that the existence is perceived. You could divide existence into two, the structures of that exist into two different categories: things and beings. Beings are fundamental because they are the definers and perceivers of things, but all beings are also things, but not all things are also beings. And so there's like a directionality to it, and that makes it kind of tough to explain sometimes. But that this is that. So like everything, everyone, beings, things. Okay? This is how you have to divide these fields. Logic is the study of everything. Mathematics is the study of everything. Genetics is the study of things, but it's just like on a specific period. Because this is the study of quantities fundamentally. Atomology is like the study of fundamental sentient quanta, which would be like hadrons to start. So quantities. I don't know if that's even how you spell quantities. This is what I'm not good at, is spelling, guys. I've never been good at it, and I don't really care to get good at it. I'm sure that there is actually like there is a logic there that's deep, but and it probably corresponds to everything I'm already talking about. But it's not. I don't get it yet. It's esoteric, but then it would just go on and on. So, but quantities is kind of like that initial, and then this would be like dimensions. Those two. Are kind of especially unique, but this one is also the one that kind of kicks off the rest. And I don't know what would be the last one here. Are you sure you are ready for this project? You're never ready for any project, really. I mean, you are as ready as you can be. This is a work in progress. It's like, sure you're ready to get married? Do you understand what, like, are you committed to it? That's really what it comes down to. Like, are you committed to a marriage? Then you are ready. Do you have like an understanding of the basics that is like permanent and a man and a woman entering into a permanent romantic relationship for the rest of their lives? Like, if that's the case, you're as ready as you can be, probably. And I will say this about this project: I'm committed. I don't know where it's going exactly. I have some goals. I have an experiment that I would like to eventually get done, and like I said, we're gonna get way more into that this year. Once I'm done producing a bit more content that's detailed on sentient singularity theory. But this is a project that I'm doing in front of you. Like when I started this, I didn't even have the term sentient singularity theory. There was no theory of mine. It was just, these are my models of fundamental reality, and I think that they are relevant to other people's work too. That's it. Like, so am I ready for it? I don't know, but I'm committed. So I don't know if ready is the right way of I don't think we can define we can know. That's the thing. It's like God knows. God's the only one that knows. But I'm committed. That I know. I'm still here. It's not like this channel's making me any money. It's an enormous amount of work, and I'm here every week, and there's a lot of work outside it. And this is not a relaxing project to me either. Like, I have plenty of hobbies that are actually like relaxing to me. And when I want to just zone out, I don't listen to videos about physics. It just it keeps me up, and it's like effort. And but I feel like I have like I committed to this. And so that's all I can say about it. But it is a good question to ask, is like, do you think you're ready for this? But I think the answer to that is I don't think that's the right question. But the most relevant answer that I can give regarding kind of what the tone of what I feel like is being wanting to be asked there is like, I'm committed, and I can't answer whether or not I'm ready. What does that mean? You know, God is the only one who can answer that question. You rely on language to abstract. Linguistics is the act of abstracting, the discipline of abstraction, but language is used when making the abstractions. You don't rely on linguistics to abstract. No, you don't. But it is a tool of it. It's like it allows you to abstract further. It's like having a calculator. It doesn't allow you to do math. It is a tool that expands your ability to do it. So it's like art. Maybe that's it. Maybe that's it. Artistic. Look at how it ends. Like, think about art. What is art if it's not the expression of I guess just impact or causality? It's the most ever present or quote unquote abstract expression of causality, and which is like it conveys emotion. It's a communicative. It is like language, like linguistics. All of this is language. Art is a language, and it uses technology. That's what art is. Art uses a medium that is beyond you, essentially. Other than maybe you could say dance, maybe isn't like an art, but at that point it's like where I'm talking about most art is uses some type of technological medium, whether it's painting or it's music, or it is, and even dancing is like the use of a tool. It's just your body too, but it is still like a physical. You're using a physical tool to help you abstract or help you communicate abstract concepts, which are not, I don't know if abstract is actually the right word for them, but they are it's causality. You're communicating causality in some way. So is economics. Which is, about society. That might be it. That's fascinating. I don't know, but it fits, right? I mean, let me know in the chat. It seems to fit. Please hit the like button, by the way, if you're enjoying this. And if you are not, comment it down below the video. And, you can help drive the algorithm so other people can not like it also. But, or some people might. But I think that this is actually onto something, like, here. This is about like multiple. It's about organisms and an assembly of organisms. And it's about organisms and it's about families and an assembly of families, essentially. So, or lineages. It's about lineages and an assembly of lineages, like organism lineages. This is about technology, or it's within technology. This is I don't know if semantics actually here is the best one. Genetics should be here. That should be switched. Semantics. Maybe. I don't know, but it's definitely, maybe that's what this is that this is semantics over here, and that this would be, I don't know, metabolics. Let's look it up. Metabolics. Meaning the relating to, metabolic means the relating to or based on metabolism, which is like chemistry in a biological context. So that's why I'm like looking at it, because that's kind of where we are here. But the issue is like, where's the line between like physics and math? And that's really what it throws everything off, guys. It really does. Is physics. I don't think that it is, or at least maybe it's mathematics that throws everything off, and it's just like, we just need to pick one, and it doesn't matter which one it is. It's like, thermodynamics is just math, yes, it's within a physical context, but it's just math. But math applies beyond everything here, so maybe that's not it. Actually, this is be this, but I don't know. We're definitely making progress, but I would never said that I had this all worked out. This was going to be a working session, but I mean, this is definitely onto something. This is a better way of understanding the fields. They're not hard sciences and soft sciences. They're the traditional stack is not correct, because then you get into like cosmology, and it's like, okay, cosmology, it's basically, you could say it's technology, because it's a cosmological verse is a technological singularity. Essentially, it's like the end of it. So you could say this is cosmology. Maybe it could be either one. You just need to pick one. Oh, I think I got it. Got it. Aesthetics. It ends correctly. The branch of philosophy concerned with the nature of beauty and the nature of taste. Look. That's it. I mean, I don't know if this is the right place for it, but this is, this belongs here. Artistic is not really it, but like saying you're artistic, I'm trying to convey that there's a communication aspect. It is a language. Art is a language, and but it's really what is the aspect of it that makes it a language. It's the aesthetics of it. You're conveying beauty or an emotion, or something. What makes cheerful music cheerful is the aesthetics of aesthetics. I don't know exactly the best way to pronounce it, but that's what defines it, is the aesthetics of it. I was talking to my wife. We were driving through a neighborhood, and she was like, "That's a Tudor," or I was like, "That's a Tudor over there," and she was like, "That's not a Tudor. It's got like it's missing these aspects of it being a Tudor." And I was like, "It kind of looks like a Tudor. Like, what's a Tudor house versus like what really defines a Tudor house versus a Gothic architecture versus colonial style house or something like that? What is the definition of those things? Well, it's definitely like the aesthetic of it, which it's like it's conveying some feeling and some idea, some some message. And, Gothic architecture conveys this, like, a specific message. And so does, Tudor house or a colonial style house. These convey a specific message. And so does all of these essentially, but it's like it's about causality. Causality is fundamentally a message. It's just information exchange. So I don't know if this goes here. It might be here, but it's interesting that aesthetics goes here, but philosophy is here, and aesthetics is defined as a branch of philosophy concerned with the nature of beauty. But philosophy, if it's the study of perspective, or even if it is the study of wisdom, or the love of wisdom, which is like the pursuit of wisdom, if within the fundamentally true context, I believe, which is theism, that is the pursuit of the wise one, which is a sentient structure. It's not just abstract wisdom. It is a someone. And same thing with even if it is the study of perspective, it is still the study of someone's perspective. And whereas this is not necessarily, but it's about like the study of impact. Maybe this is it, actually. Here, let's move these things around. So that can go there. This one can go maybe here. And then wait, sorry. This one would go here. This one would go here. And then this one would disappear from here. And I don't know where this one versus this one would go, because again, physics messes up the model in some ways. Maybe actually aesthetics goes here. It's like, I don't know. Maybe this is, gosh, it's like math and physics, man. They just mess up the model because they're too overlapping. Physics would go here. That doesn't make sense, because physics is kind of the basis of chemistry, really. Like quantum physics is. But see, that's the problem, is like, that's the answer to that. But but that's different from like physics, like thermodynamics, which is really just that, I guess. So that makes more sense if you're defining that a bit more. And then I don't know where aesthetics would kind of reside, but interesting. What do you think? Seems kind of obvious. Physics is the Excel spreadsheet. The math are the numbers required for certain cells which have qualitative values, and non-math language is used for qualitative values versus quantitative values is the math. You might be onto something there. It's funny because last night we have a Discord. If you want to join, send me a private message on the Theory of Everyone Instagram, and I will send you the link. But we have live calls every Wednesday night right now. But once a week we have a live call. We just talk about really anything. And last night we were talking about kind of the three-body problem, which I watched that show, and we were talking about what is the problem with the three-body problem. And is there a solution, and should we even call it a problem? And I saw this video that somebody was saying there is no act in the three body problem. There, it's like three pendulums that interact with each other essentially, or three, you know, suns in a solar system that would be interacting with each other, and it just causes a chaotic system that is unsustainable. But in this movie or this show, the three body problem, it's pretty. That's new on Netflix or something. It's based on, I think, an old book. That there's like aliens from a distant solar system that has three suns, and this causes chaos in the solar system to the point where they keep getting their civilization destroyed in countless different ways, and they have to restart again and again and again, and before they can actually get technologically advanced enough to leave the solar system. And so the goal of the civilization becomes to, like, we need to leave because we're just going to keep getting set back because there's no stability to this system that we're stuck in. And so they want to come to Earth because Earth is much more stable. And but then I saw this guy explaining, and he's not wrong, that you won't actually find a solar system that kind of falls under the same issues as being described in the film, because it wouldn't stay together if that was the case. Like, if it was just pure chaos, there would be nothing that would hold this system together. But you can make it a model of it in a computer program, and you can run it and see this concept, abstract, quote unquote, concept of the three body problem, but you don't see it where you would expect it in physical structures, if that makes sense. So, but the solution, the reason why you can model it is, and you don't see it in a single isolated physical system in space-time, is because the program is the container that is the solution to the three-body problem in the model. It is holding all those bodies together because it's holding them inside of the model. Whereas in our physical, space-time context, that's not the case so much. I mean, existence is held together. And the chaos that we introduce as beings with the ability to make choices, and sin or whatever, like, that causes chaos and decay. That is almost like it's like an infinite body problem is like what God has to deal with, but it's like on a sentient structure level where it's caused by our ignorance and selfishness and sin and whatever. But he holds it together because he is the system, he's containing it, and he also is able to shove things and change things to some degree, some of those things, when they need to be in order to make sure that his will is done. So it's like it's an activity. Like, he has to be active about it because otherwise it would decay if he didn't act. So because of our ignorance, I guess. So it's like a multi-body problem. It's an infinite body problem. It's an ever-growing infinite body problem. That's what the chain of cosmological verses is, essentially. It's more than that, but that is like a component to the structure from God's perspective. It would seem, but it's on a sentient level and a moral level. It's not on a that translates over to a physical level. I mean, you can't resist entropy and continue to grow and be generative in the physical sense, if you're having issues on a moral and with wisdom and morality. Like, if you're not doing the things that you need to do in order to overcome entropy, then you're you're decaying, which is the thing about the three body problem. It's about, like, the decay of a system. But so when you're talking about, like, Excel is the math, or Excel is, what did you say? The Excel spreadsheet is the physics. Okay. I mean, but is it also or is it the logic? I don't know. Like the issue is the blending between metaphysics, mathematics, and just physics. Like these terms are not um I don't know. They're not very clearly distinguished from each other. They're very much fuzzy. And even in this context that I'm building this, it's fuzzy, and this is much clearer than the current state of academia. You know, it's like I'm an astrobiologist. Oh, there is no such thing. There's no known biology outside of Earth. So what do you mean you're an astrobiologist? You're studying Harry Potter, and uh, you know, you can be a biologist, and then you can think about that in terms of like, you know, other planets. But it's not a. You can't be an astrobiologist, someone who studies biological life on other planets. Like that does you can't. There's nothing to study that we know of. I'm not saying it doesn't exist. I don't know, but there's there is nothing that is known within academia at large, at least, to study about that. So, um, but when we say cosmology, you know, I hear like people say I'm a cosmologist, and I know people who would call themselves cosmologists, and they're really astronomers. And like, yes, they're using astronomy to try and map cosmology, which it means like they're trying to map and discover and figure out what is, I guess, where the universe came from and where it's going, or what it's doing. But you can't actually do that with what they are looking at. You're stuck in space time, and you can't figure out. Fundamental cosmology cannot be is not something that you figure out by looking through a telescope. It is something that you figure out by studying sentient lineages. Like that's what it is. If you look up cosmology online, let's look up cosmology. The science of the origin and development of the universe. You can't really understand that fundamentally by looking through a telescope. It's like it's so incredibly misleading to think that, because you're so stuck in space-time, and you can't be stuck in space-time if you want to figure out the origin of space-time. You have to think about what exists beyond space-time, and so that is sentience, really. But I mean, you know, try and figure that out for yourself. Don't take my word for it unless it makes sense. But and you think you understand what I'm saying. If you don't think you understand what I'm saying, don't just assume that what I'm saying is accurate. I used to do that. You know, I used to be like, oh man, I used to watch Michio Kaku every night in college, and I would be like, I had no physics aspirations. I just liked listening to what he was saying, because it was like entertaining. It was like lore, but I didn't think about it like that. I thought I was really learning something real. I was like, did you know that we actually live in 11 dimensions? And then you hear them speak about it. It's like, well, these dimensions, they could be very, very small. Like, bro, you don't even understand dimensions if you're saying they could be very, very small. Like that language doesn't make sense for describing dimensions. So it's just lore, and it was lore to me, and I didn't even realize it, because I was taking their word for it. And we're doing that with physicists now, and not just physicists, biologists, and you know, all kinds. We do that. We just idol worship, and we also just our academic. Somebody said academia is cancer, but I understand what, you know, the frustration better than as well as anyone. I don't want to say better than anybody, but as well as anybody. But the issue is that, like, where our accreditations are based on I guess they're field specific, so you're kind of assuming that though somebody is an expert on something that you don't that you're not, and you didn't, and you assume that they studied and they got it, and they understand it, but you just kind of have to take their word for it. But there's no like demonstration of competence in a lot of these things that is able to be perceived and understood by those outside the field. So if I say I'm a good mechanic, and you're like, okay, well, fix my car, and I can fix your car, then you could be like, okay, yeah, you do, you're a mechanic. But if I'm like, I'm a physicist, and you're like, okay, how do I know that? And you're like, well, because we actually live in 11 dimensions, and you know, those 11 dimensions could be in this space of a bubble bath universe, or some, where a new bubble is formed for every single time that an atom splits or something. It's just like it's just a bunch of lore, and it's not even understood as lore. Physics is lore nowadays. Not all of it. Like thermodynamics is real, but that's like you can be like, okay, if you're a physicist, tell me how long that it's going to take for that pot to heat up with this amount of this flame that we have, this level of heat that we're applying to it. How long is it going to take for that tank of water to heat up to this temperature? And it's like, you can calculate that. That's different. That's like being a mechanic. It's not the same thing as like trying to just, I don't know, postulate the whether or not there's a multiverse where every new universe is created whenever we choose a different soda. I'm not, obviously I'm kind of exaggerating, but maybe not. They don't know. I don't know. Like, I mean, I don't think that makes any sense at all. So, but I don't think that their whatever version they have of it would make that much sense either. It's just lore. And there's some degree of like internal logical consistency maybe within their given assumptions, but the problem is that whether you're competent should not be decided upon by just a bunch of people in your own like niche of like that is so internal that's not having an impact outside of itself. Like physics used to be, they'd be like, is Einstein a good physicist? Well, he came up with this equation, and then Oppenheimer, came into the mix, and a few other guys, and they went and they created this atomic bomb. It's like, okay, well, they were competent. They were like mechanics, though. They were engineers. And we need competency to be judgeable by people outside of your own internal niche. Otherwise, it's just impossible. If everybody's like, well, he's got the Fields Medal, so that's why he's really competent. For what? Yeah, but what did he do? I mean, they gave Roger Penrose a Nobel Prize. I like Roger Penrose. I do think he's onto some things, but I also think he's wrong on some things. But I mean, so is everybody. But there are some things that I think that he says that are wrong. And why did they give him a Nobel Prize, though? What did he do? What did he discover? And I think Eric Weinstein said it, and I'm not trying to be just disrespectful at all. I mean, I think Roger Penrose is one of the last of the truly like competent physicists of the previous century, but it just, that doesn't mean he's going to figure out what is necessary to truly like make the next big advancement. But it might be relevant, and at least he's thinking about these things in terms of context instead of just dimensions, just abstract dimensions everywhere, which that's about mental structures. That's, of course, it's going to be observed everywhere, but he's thinking about it in terms of aeons. And okay, we're making some type of more, I don't want to say concrete proposal, but more physical proposal. Like that's what I mean. If you're a physicist, then like make a physical proposal about a physical system, and not a non-physical system. But physics has kind of become the study of non-physical systems. It's if that makes any aesthetics, genetics, semantics, economics. Like these are not about physical systems. Mathematics. I mean, physics is not about it is about physical systems, but it's not. It's about systems that are within all different mediums that are physical, but it's not about a single physical system that's like a specifically defined physical system. It's, thermodynamics is just about impact within a specific media that has specific properties. It's just math. So I don't know. I am kind of stuck on this like specific thing. Maybe it's a mistake to think that I have to include it, because like you said, it might be that the Excel sheet is the physics, but it's also the logic and it's also the mathematics. So like, what is going on with that? I would say maybe the cells of the Excel sheet might be the mathematics, but they might be I don't know, a little lost. And like I said, the problem is that physics is not one field. It's like, what is cosmology? If it's just looking through a telescope, it is not physics anymore. It is about astronomy. Even if you're like looking back and you're just like, it's just astronomy, guys. It's not cosmology, actually. If you're looking through the telescopes, it's not cosmology. And I mean, I don't know if astronomy is physics or not or anything. It's just not cosmology. Cosmology is about the generative structure of existence. It's not about the non-generative perceived things. It's about like the process more so, which means you need to understand the nature, and then you need to follow that nature. If the nature is sentience, you need to follow the sentient structures, not dust, or rocks or anything like that. I'm not saying there's no value to any of this stuff. Certainly there is, but it's like there is no definition of physics anymore. It's just frustrating, but it's also it's not. I don't even think it's helpful anymore. I was gonna say it's like it's useful. It's not even useful. It's really not. And yeah, it's just not. Like, I don't know a single person who calls themselves a cosmologist who doesn't actually start talking about the nature of the universe and where it's going and where it came from until they inject God into the equation. And then they start talking about that. And it's like, okay, now you're doing cosmology. But they don't call that cosmology. It's like theology, but it's like, is there a difference between theology and cosmology? I mean, it would say one of them is the study of God's creation, and the other one is just study of God, but I don't really know how separate those things are in terms of like study. I don't know if you can study God without studying through his creation. But it's not just by looking through a telescope. I mean, and I get it, like to some level, you can't not everything is God, but you're not studying the logos. Consciousness kind of is the opposite to decay. We prevent decay by conscious awareness and then by understanding, taking actions. Yeah, exactly. You have to swim upstream, and the only way that you swim upstream is by making a choice. And the only things that make a choice are not just things, they are beings. So they are sentient things. That's what defines them. And yeah, it is the opposite. But this is what Carl Friston says is like that, agents or main goal is to, I think he says something like, to fight entropy or something like that. But that's not really what it is. It's that the the goal is to grow. So Yuval Noah Harari, who wrote *Sapiens*, and he's just a well-known academic commentator, I guess, or person within academia. And I forgot what his accreditations are, but it doesn't really matter. He talks about everything. He's posted on Twitter. He said, "We're running out of time to figure out what the meaning of life is," and I think, that's just, maybe that it is just a waste of time to try and figure out the answer to that question. It is a waste of time to try and figure out the answer to that question if that's a bad question, there is no answer to it. But you need to be able to contextualize that question in order to even know whether or not it's a bad question. So you need to know the fundamental context of existence. And unless you know that it is, sentient beings, then you can't even define what life is. It's funny because when you look up life online, the condition that distinguishes animals and plants from inorganic matter. Okay. Well, what if a technological sentience arises? Is that life? It's just so arbitrarily limited, and also it's highly likely that that agency exists on scales preceding cells, and they're not even talking about cells here. They're talking about they're talking about cellular organisms, but so they're clearly talking about cells, but they're not saying it overtly. It's assumed. But then what happened that makes this so different from molecules, when molecules do go through all these same things, like they decay and they change and they interact and they, sometimes they decay, but sometimes they grow, and then all of a sudden you can get a stacked structure on top of that, and that is a cell. And then same thing happens there. They decay, they grow, they interact, and then sometimes they can unite, and you can get a stacked structure on top of that sentient structure, which is an organism. So, or a sentient organism. I don't think all necessary. My theory suggests that some plants might not be sentient, but the cells are sentient. But they're corporisms, which is they're like a corporation. It's made of a bunch of little sentient beings, but it's not in and of itself sentient. But when you also say life, what is life? It says the existence of an individual human being or animal. Again, very limiting here, but this is the key term. And I was thinking about this the other night. I was hoping that this would actually show up, is that there would be two definitions given, and that they would be what I thought of the other night, which is what they are. Because when you think about it like this, and when they say what is life, well, it's organic, and it has metabolism, and it's like all these arbitrary, somewhat arbitrary qualifiers. But then you say, are you alive? And if you say, and what defines you being alive? It's like, okay, I am, and if I am not, then I am not alive, essentially. At least if I am embodied, and if I am not embodied, then I am not alive. And so but then there's this other component to it, where it's like, you say my life, I want to live my life the way that I want to live. It's like, when you use it in that context, it's life is a process of that an individual, it's a journey that an individual goes through, but it's defined as a life. That journey is defined as life by the fact that it is the fundamental journey ever-present journey of a sentient being. And so we built into the semantics of the term life, we actually do have the true definition, essentially, of what it would be built in, which when we say my life, it's conveying a concept about an information about what that term means that is accurate. But then when we say life, what is life definition within academia, you get life is defined as any system capable of performing functions such as eating, metabolizing, excreting, breathing, moving, growing, reproducing, and responding to external stimuli. What? Okay, well, all like that is done by molecules as well. Essentially, they consume and they excrete and they decay and they grow and they unite and they interact and they respond to external stimuli. They even move around like they do. So where's the distinction there? It's just that there's a semantic issue where we say it's metabolism versus, I don't know, versus quantum physics. It's like you're just changing the terms. I'm not saying that's the best way of comparison, but it's definitely not. But breathing, it's like, what is it? Breathing? What are we really saying there? What is happening with breathing that fundamentally, that then can we go look for that in molecules? We don't just look at a molecule and say, you don't look like you're breathing, but that's what we're doing. And that's not the way to do it. It's reasoning by analogy, and which is not reasoning. Elon Musk says that all the time. He's like, there's reasoning by first principles and reasoning by analogy. No. There's the appearance of reasoning, which is using analogies, which can help. Which is just, it's not reasoning in and of itself. It can help you communicate reasoning, but it is not reasoning. And so it's a term, essentially. Like an analogy is kind of the equivalent of a term. It's just a packet of information, whereas reasoning is a logically consistent, highly constrained process of generation of information. Like, that's what it is. That's not what an analogy is. It's like just a packet, if that makes any sense. You could say there's a word and then maybe a term, and then there's like analogy, and it's just like it's like the three generations of communication, I guess. But yeah, I mean, that's the thing. It's like we're putting it in an artificial, detached environment, that term life, when we put it in just this little box in academia called biology. And it's this what happens when you literally divorce it from personal experience. But when we look at our personal experience, we're saying, my life, I'm alive. Like, okay, now what's the defining attribute that is associated with whether or not those statements are correct or not? Sentience. Something that's dead is not sentient. Something that is alive is sentient. Something that has a life is sentient. Something that does not have a life is not sentient. There's nothing here about metabolism. I'm alive because I'm metabolizing. No, because you're a sentient being, like, that is embodied right now. That's what it is. And but it's like right in our face all the time, attached to our personal experience every day, and we have kind of we are indoctrinated into not paying attention to it, and just trusting the biologist to tell us what life is. why do they know what life is? Because they read it in a textbook. Where'd that come from? It's like none of it seems to be mapping back really to personal experience. It's just mind-blowing. It's mind-blowing. This is one of the major problems with making progress in science beyond what we've currently done, like beyond iterative progress, making revolutionary progress at the point that we're at, is because it requires a paradigm shift in certain fundamental assumptions that then would completely flip the table of all of our educational institutions and accreditation institutions. That's really what academia has become. It's not even, I'm not going to say they don't do research, because some people certainly do, and some people are doing great research in academia, but it's not common. What it really is it's become a way of enslaving people by selling them a product that's overpriced that they can't return, and also what that product is accreditation. And I will say, like, I personally struggle with this quite a bit, because I see a bunch of people talking about similar things in relevant concepts and ideas and things in this kind of fundamental physics space. And if you have any kind of PhD at all, you are assumed to be credible. But and it has nothing to do with whether or not you've actually been able to make predictions and that have panned out, or whether or not you built anything that has worked. It is just about, do you win the Fields Medal? I mean, I don't know, like, I know, like, Ed Witten is probably he is a mathematical genius. Like, I'm not going to say that. I don't want to even say that. He is very, very mathematically talented and highly intelligent. Genius is a moment. It is not a person. Idiocy is also a moment, not a person. But everybody just reveres him so much. And Eric Weinstein was talking about him once, and he was like, and it's not just him, but, like, he's the guy, even among physicists, that physicists revere. And then all the rest of us look at Michio Kaku the same way that, Brian Greene or other people look at, in physics, look at Ed Witten. It's like, they say things that are not fully understood by the people who are listening, and are kind of assumed to be, I think, highly intelligent because of that. But, or revolutionary, or, like, not, I guess that's not the right term, but accurate and important, I guess, two terms. And I'm not saying that they never do, but it's like, you can propose all kinds of theoretical engines all day long, but have you ever built one that runs? That's the question. And physicists today don't really do that anymore. And I'm a little afraid of, like, what that would actually mean. I mean, I think I have some ideas on what that could look like, but I mean, within the context that I work in, which is sentience, but like, there has to be some way of perceiving competence from outside of, the club. If there isn't, then you should not be revered as an authority at all. Like, we shouldn't care about anything else. You should not have authority to be a mechanic if you've never fixed a car. Like, look at the reviews of a auto shop online, and it's going to be much more helpful in telling you whether or not this person is competent than just because you walked in and you saw some piece of paper on the wall. And but physics has become so quote unquote abstract, and the definition of abstract has been so convoluted that we don't even know where to start when it comes to, like, judging this stuff. So, what is a Calabi-Yau manifold? What is it as a thing? Not as a concept that is just like a geometric structure. That's like saying it's a 4. Okay, what is It's a 6 because it's a six-dimensional manifold structure. Claudio manifold is 6. Okay, what? 6 what? That's, what we want to know. If it's physics, it's 6 somethings. It's a 6-dimensional something. It has to be a thing, though. It can't just be a concept. And I don't think that abstract is that which is true is never just a concept in your mind. It's not. It is something that it's a structure that is the result of the structure of mind and the process of mind of information, but it's not just in your mind. It's just a result of your mind. It's not imaginary. That's what I'm saying. It's ever present. So but we don't have the right word for that, because abstract could mean imaginary, but it could also mean, ever present. But that's very different things. By the way, I really appreciate everybody watching still. I know we started late. I'm kind of not done yet. I'm going to keep going a bit. I like this. I like these working sessions. It's been a while since I've been doing things like this. Been doing commentaries for a while, but this is more fun, I think. But please hit the like button if you're watching and you like this, because there's 11 people watching and there's only 8 likes. So don't be lazy. I'm joking. But if you enjoy it, please, it helps. I would appreciate it. But 1 is equal to 1 is an assumption. I think I saw in one of your videos something like 1 is equal to infinity. Yeah, that was very early, and I'm not going to say that it was... There's something to what I was saying, but that was before I realized how... I wasn't yet as specific and with the language that I use. And like I said, this is an ongoing process. So, and it's a linguistic, process. That's what it is primarily. I come at this, I don't have a degree in philosophy, but I use language, even though I can't spell, to do this, because I'm not, I'm not a mathematician. I don't know the language of mathematics, but I can speak, and I can be like, okay, atom plus ology equals atomology. Why aren't we using that? And then you look it up, and it's like, the study of atoms. Dated term. I like a lot of these dated terms a lot more than our current terms. I think they're much better. Genealogy. Much better term than genetics. Genetics, I mean, not that there's anything wrong with genetics, but it's not a replacement for genealogy. At all. It's the language that we use to describe impact within genealogy, or within the structures that genealogy studies, which is lineages. And we don't use it anymore. I mean, watch. Let's see if it says dated term. Probably not, but it's definitely basically a dated term, because you never hear anybody say it anymore. Genealogy is the study of families, family history, and the tracing of their lineage. Guys, when you look here at what we're doing, I totally lost it. Here it is. I have it right here. I don't look up genealogy. I don't have to look up the definition of genealogy to be like, okay, it's families. It's like, no, I know because I look at the word and I can interpret what it means. But if you can't do that, then you should be able to do that. You should be able to be like, oh, I bet you etymology goes here. That's the term. And you should be able to build it, because you should be able to build on the context that is around you. It should not be detached. Same thing with what is the definition of life? You should be able to build that answer from that question by saying, okay, I'm alive. If I was not alive, what would be the difference? And if I say, I have a life, and what defines that life? What is that? Okay, it's the journey that I make. Okay, what am I? What defines me? Sentient. I'm sentient, and what defines me as being alive. I am sentient and embodied currently. This within this space time, or the observerse, I think is what is going to be a better term for us to help do this, because to say space time is not, it's not even like yes, it's true, but it's not even as, the more the better the term is, the more the easily we will be able to understand all of this. So this is why I think Eric Weinstein's observerse is like such a, it's a better, it is the next term probably that we need, or something similar to it, that is like the context of a life is like in the verse of observers that can be observed, the observerse. It's like this is, it's not a term that is detached. It's a term that's contextualized, or contextualizing. But if we just say, that's, I don't know, quantum physics. I really don't like that term, quantum physics, because I mean, I think that there's some degree of truth to it, but of sense to it. But the thing is that it assumes that those patterns only apply to that scale or that level of structure, and that those same patterns don't apply to our level of structure. But the reality is that we are quanta. I'm a quantum of a human. Like a quantum is one quantum definition. But we changed it at some point in physics. Physics, a discrete quantity of energy proportional to the magnitude of the frequency of the radiation it represents. That, I understand why they use that term for that. It's not the right term. And it has really screwed, it has screwed up academia. Probably had a ripple effect that I don't even fully understand. But I can see it. And because then you get people saying, you see like a lot of people in the more new age type of community, whatever that means, and they'll say quantum, and people will be like, no, you shouldn't be using those terms. Those are scientific terms. And when physicists say quanta, they really mean something very specific. And that's true. Yes, they do. But the reality is that it's not about what physicists mean when they say quantum. What it's about is what is that word conveying on its own, within just the context of how it's spelled and what it sounds like, within the context of the semantics of it, not within the context of physics. That's like saying, well, when we say life, we mean something very specific. It's a scientific thing. Like biologists, they really, they mean something very specific when they say life. Really? Is it really that specific? Because it's like some places listed as like 10 qualifiers, and some people listed as like 4 qualifiers and 6 qualifiers. How many qualifiers? How specific do you need to get to define life? You're not going to find a very specific definition. You're just not. Breathing, not, some lists don't include breathing. They just, be like metabolism responds to external stimuli. It's like, okay. What about responding to internal stimuli? Like, what's that? I would say that's probably more fundamental, actually. It's like a sentient life, and that will is the fundamental internal stimuli that pushes you to grow against entropy and make choices and do things. That is way more defining of life than external stimuli. Fire responds to external stimuli, guys. Why is that a qualifier of life? It's not a specific thing of life. Everything responds to external stimuli, essentially. People could say, well, it's a little different. No. When a living being that is sentient responds to something that's an external stimuli, they're really responding to the internal feelings that they are experiencing due to the external stimuli, but they're not actually responding to the external stimuli. Responding to the external stimuli is like flicking the slider, it responded to the external stimuli. But if this is a sentient being and I flick it and it's like a, I don't know, a mouse or something like that, which I wouldn't do that, that's cruel, but to do that, and then the mouse is in pain and runs away, into its hole. Like, it's not responding to external stimuli alone. It's responding to the internal experience that it is having due to, this event that is, it's an external stimuli, but it's not responding to just the external stimuli. And there's so many semantic issues with this, because responding is like, you have to think about what to respond, what does that really mean? Or react versus act versus just be acted on. These are like, that stuff matters. But that's why this is important that we get the words right. But to say quantum, it really means something very specific. Or to say life, it really means something very specific. It's the same exact term, by the way. Like, it's just talking about what is fundamental. It's trying to figure out what is the nature of fundamental reality, or what is the scale of fundamental reality. But in my paper, I write this, and it kind of gets, I say it constantly throughout my paper, and I say the goal of this, of a fundamental theory is to describe the foundational structure and fundamental nature. You don't just say it's to describe the, you have to use two terms, because you have to say it's to define the structure and the nature, both, not one or the other. And the life question of life, it's really something very specific. But what is it? We're trying to figure that out, but like, it's really very specific. And that's just what is the nature of existence. They don't think about it like that, because they think that their context in biological academia, biology and academia, is that life is emergent from non-life. If that makes, I don't even know. That's not logically consistent at all, but that is the assumption. And that's due to their lack of being able to escape relativity. And then the question of physics is, trying to understand the fundamental structure of reality. It's like the very base level structure. Okay, what is that? Like, quantum, the discrete quantity of energy, proportional. It's like they're trying to get at the most fundamental structure. And the reality is that when you properly contextualize these things, we're talking about one thing, and that thing is a beingness. But it's interesting because, I say this as in my video, Theories of Everything, How to Guide, is that your theory of anything, but especially fundamental reality, really has to, even the name matters to whether or not it's accurate, because it can't just be Goldstein universe theory. Like, that's ridiculous. Like, that's not, it's not, you couldn't do that. But you have to have a term that is the distillation of what the core proposition of the theory is, essentially, as in as concise a manner as possible, but also be complete. And that is, there's two different ways that I could propose that, essentially. And one of them is to use one term, one of them is to use two terms. And it could be beingness theory or being theory, like a theory of beings or beingness, or it is the sentient singularity theory, which is, it's what this is it's like a coin. This is just an analogy, but it is still should, maybe help a little bit with painting a picture that allows you to reason. It's not reasoning in and of itself. Is you can't look at both sides of a coin at the same time. But if I ask you, what is a coin? You're like, okay, it's this circular, singular unit, usually metal structure that has two sides to it. It's meant to be like a two-sided singular structure that you use for, a quantum of value exchanged in an economy, which is exactly what this is, the discrete quantity of information proportionate. It's like it's the same scale patterns on every scale, but that's why physics and economics, guys, we put that on the same side, if you remember. Physics, economics, coin, and particle. Same thing. Just different scales. And but if you say beingness theory, the problem is that you have it it doesn't it's accurate and it's total and it's complete, but it is complete within the context of knowing what a being is. And that's not really like it's I don't know if I have the right words to explain like why that's not. It's like you've lost the ability to see the specifics of the structure at that point, which is that's not it's not able to be built on anymore, even if it's like complete. It's like just packing up and saying existence is, and it's a being. Okay, well, now do we understand its fundamental nature and structure? Okay, yeah, it's beingness. That's what it is. But what is that? And how do we differentiate it in a way that allows us to build on it? And you need kind of two sides to that. But the thing is, you can't look at those two sides at the same time. Same as a coin. So a coin, beingness theory would be like the coin theory, and then the sentient singularity theory is like tells you what a coin is constructed of, which is two sides, and what the nature of those two and structure of those. I guess what those two sides are, which are one is a nature, one is a structure, and then sentient singularity theory. That term doesn't just tell you that there's that essentially like it's beings, which is you can interpret that, but it allows you to do that, and it also allows you to go back and to expand upon it and be like, okay, you can interpret that there's two aspects to this that matter. One of them is the structure, one of them is the nature. So sentient singularity. This is like the foundation of all logic, all mathematics, because now you have singularities, a singular unit that you can build you can build mathematics from it. And and you build mathematical constraints and logical constraints from the fact that you have the core structure down, but then you have the nature down that allows you to kind of understand the context of it all, and which is sentience. And so to say sentient singularity theory, you can go upwards to, or you can reduce it down further to beingness from those two terms, and you can also build on everything else from those two terms that comes after that. So including the fact that like there's two different things that we need to look at. One of them is nature, one of them is structure. And that even leads to, kind of what we're doing now, where we're dividing the fields. One of them is looking at fields that study the nature, and one of them is fields that look at studying the structure, because mathematics, linguistics, all these economics, these are about studying logical causality, which is the same thing as information, which is about studying the mind. It is about studying the structure of mind. And what is, biology and chemistry and sociology about? It's about studying the structures, the generative structures of that structure that is the structure that makes up mathematics, or constrains mathematics and constrains language and constrains logic. So there's it makes, I think it makes more sense to kind of have a theory that has the two terms, but you could say beingness theory and still be accurate, but it's not as easy to build from, I guess. That makes sense. I'm not the best. I don't have the best terms for describing why that it's better than using one term, but it allows you to be completely coherent and also relational. That's what it is. This is about studying relationships, how things relate to each other. Saying being is not about you're losing something there to some degree, because it's not about its relationship with others, or with logic, or it is. I'm really struggling to explain this, so I'm gonna probably stop, but and we'll probably wrap it up. But it's just more of a dead end, but it's not false. It's still true. But their directionality matters when it comes to information processing, and it's, you know, that the directionality is more apparent and natural from saying, I guess, that a coin is a structure of heads and tails, instead of saying a coin is a coin. Is like, it's like saying beingness theory is like saying existence theory, but that's what it basically, if that makes any sense. It's not false, but it's not as specific as it needs to be in order to allow for natural building, because it is in and of itself almost like a deduction, because it's just like God's eye view, almost, to the point where it's everything is contained within that one thing, and we're not there. So it's easier for us to just build, starting from the place of multiplicity, because that's where we live. We live in a world of multiplicity from the start, because we were created by another already, so we don't exist on our own. Beingness is like, that can exist on its own. It's kind of like tough to build from there, because it's so detached from our experience of differentiation. Yeah, you can still do it, but it's very tough. So anyways, let's see here. The body can be living, but you are not. I agree. That's more life. That's just a metabolic process. Sorry, people, I'll stop spamming. No worries. You're not spamming. Just randomly decided to expand my rib cage and stretch my lungs out to inhale more oxygen and hydrogen and carbon. If only I mostly breathed helium, maybe I could hop over most things like Mario. That would be entertaining. Maybe numbers are like electron orbitals. They are not a thing or a single point, but a cloud. It's not even that they're a cloud. They are the excitation point of interaction between information structures. So an electron is, I call it a focus point, whereas a quark, I call it a force point. So a quark is like the fingers of God, and it's like, why you need three of them to like start manipulating everything. Well, when you look at a hadron, a proton, or a neutron, it's either two up quarks and one down quark, or two down quarks and one up quark. And like, think about try and maneuver this pen with just two fingers. Really, really, really limited. Add in a third finger, and now you can really start to actually manipulate things and be intentional. And you're adding an extra dimension that kind of allows you to turn it back in on itself, instead of just like spin around, I don't know, move back and forth. And you can kind of, it allows you to like orient it within around itself almost. And this this is why it is like quarks are force points. They're points of force that we can perceive that are then, they're like points of force of will, essentially. Like it's like God is like pushing, almost super. I'm being like super literal. I'm not even being metaphorical or anything like that. I'm being like literal and metaphorical at the same time. This is super literal, that God is pushing it's like his initial push on creation to like give it force. And what is that force? How do we experience that most fundamentally? Will. It's what pushing us from the inside, not from the outside. It's not an external stimuli. It's a stimuli that we experience within us, but it's really from beyond us, But it also kind of defines us as being us and not just, an object that was flicked. It's like, and this is very relevant to my experiment that I'm going to propose later this year. And I think that you guys will probably find that interesting, but I think it's fascinating at least, but it's very relevant to this. And then you have focus points, which are points of focus of a wave, essentially, which is just information in motion, and which is energy, but it's just energy is information in motion, essentially, or it's energy, it's information that has the potential to be animated or directed or be in motion, but change potential. But this, when you imagine, you look at a wave on the beach and you have like a telescope that it focuses in as small as you could possibly go to a single point, like a theoretical single point. But you look at that wave, you will see that wave as a point. And this theoretical, I don't know if this is the equivalent to what people mean a lot of times when they say a light cone, but when you're thinking about like this theoretical telescope, that of focus scope, I guess, this is just your mind. You can't not focus on singular things. Your mind automatically, in order to make sense of the world, because it has to break things into singular units, singularities. So you say that's a water bottle, and this is a ring, and that happens when we try and look at fundamental information, which is like a wave, and you're perceiving that wave, and it's like a screenshot or like a snapshot of where that wave is, but you're seeing it as a point because your mind constrains you to force you to focus on a single point. And so it's literally coming from our minds that we are seeing essentially a wave, but a point on a wave. And that's why, there's various phenomenon associated with measuring different attributes of an electron that you can't measure at the same time. You can't look at them at the same time, but you can look at them individually. This is the same thing with like a coin. You can't look at heads and tails at the same time. When you discuss a being, you have to talk about its nature and its structure at the same time, every single time. It gets repetitive when you write it into a paper, but you have to be the structure, the fundamental structure, foundational structure, and fundamental nature. That's what you're trying to figure out. And if you say, I want to know what is existence, it's really hard to like even start going down that route. You could do it, like I said, but it's tough. But if you're like, I want to find the fundamental structure and the foundational nature, now we have two questions to allow us to understand this single structure that actually has two critical components to it, at least that are observed, not even that are observed, that are foundational. Be careful, Tyler, you might wind up justifying some mean and cruel things. To me? Is that what you're saying? Are you like warning me? Not like from you, but like, are you saying like people will be mean to me? Or are you saying like, I said something earlier in the stream that is like concerning? I'm guessing the former. But what if UFO is the ultimate technology and Sasquatch is the ultimate biology, and they're all one and the same? I don't have an answer to that question. That's very cool how you put it, like information high points. Yeah, they're like focus. They're focus points. They're points that are observed within the context of focus. That's what they are. Um, so when people say it's a particle and a wave at the same time, no, it's a point of focus in a string of information, which is moving, which you could say is wave. But it's a point of focus. Um, Very nice, like music, like notes. Yeah, exactly, like notes. They're like notes in a song, but the song is constantly playing. It's not a theoretical song that's stuck in. When you make an observation of that song, like somebody else is playing that song, and you are just going to catch a note whenever you look. But so you can't always time what note you're going to see because you're not the one singing or playing the music. Not in that case. Maybe there are particles that are perceived from a different perspective that would be coming from our, you know, us. But in some, I don't know how to. That's a whole nother topic we don't have time for. But yeah, it's coming from not you though, an electron. That makes it not fully harmonic. The music theory and I guess the analogies. Well, yeah. Anyways, guys, it's really late. There are 10 people watching. Only 9 people have liked it. Let's get those likes to double digits, guys. I would seriously appreciate it. I'm trying to get better at just encouraging it because it would be nice if this stuff got to more people who would find it valuable. But if you think it is, also send it, share it to people. It really does help. And I mostly just appreciate, the participation, and that's why I show up. So, and like, the question at the very beginning from somebody who said, "Are you ready for this project?" And I said, "I'm committed." That's all I can say. It's my interaction with other beings that drives me for this. It's not just views, which is why I like live. And that also makes it hard to like spread. So kind of does help when it's shared, especially. But it's, I appreciate it. That's all I'm saying. So anyways, peace, guys. And thank you for joining. Hope it was entertaining.